We're here to solve this tight fit Sudoku by Sam Cappleman-Lynes with an irregular grid shape and also a low-high theme. You'll see the digits 1 through 5 are on the top here, so lowish numbers, and the digits 5 through 9 are on the bottom here. Actually, there are no 6s in the grid, so one of the key digits to look at is going to be this digit 5 that we have 3 of. This cell will have to be a 5, and then there'll be a 5 in the space and the space. And I'm trying to write these clues on the edges and also not in the obvious slash position, so I know that right now this isn't a sure placement. Another thing as we get started is just look at the irregular patterns and see some things about it that matter. For instance, we do have 4 cell stretches in some of these regions, and so a clue that's not in those stretches will be a good one to look at. For instance, this 4 can't be in any of those 4 cells, so it's got to be in one of these 2 cells. That's going to have some influence as we get through the grid. We'll see that actually quicker, though, after I do something around the middle. So notice, if you look at all of the 18 cells in the bottom, all of them belong to 3 contiguous regions, except for 1 cell that points out and 1 cell that points in. And so these will have to be the same values. This is true in irregular Sudoku regardless of the slash pattern, but where it has a slash pattern actually means 2828 are in both of those cells. And what that actually now does for this 3 and this 4, where they're pointing down here, it says 3 and 4 have to sit across these cells. So we have 3, 3, and 4, 4 in some of these cells to use. And this looks like it might be giving us the first aha in this puzzle because it's putting lots of low digits into these spaces. We have a 2 here already, and we have a 3, 4 that are going to point across. So look in this cell, which is a tight fit digit smaller than a 5. It only has the value 1 left for it right now. And if that's true, we can place some other ones in the grid pretty quickly. This bottom row has only this cell left for its last one. That comes up sort of through this side. This region has these 2 cells for a 1, but a 1 can't be larger than a 5, so 1 has to come in here. That means down in this region, we have just 1 cell for a 1 and 1 cell for a 1 in that region. So some good placements for doing that. Let's, though, continue some of this work and think through some other values we can play with. And so another thing to now consider is still around these 2 8s, and to recognize because this is an extension that's avoiding this region, this 2 8 is going to have to sit somewhere across these 3 options, and this 2 8 is going to have to sit across these 3 options for digits. But this 2 8 actually is limited so that in this region it has to be represented across these cells. So in this column, this cell can't contain a 2 or an 8, and these cells already in this region with a 2 or 8 can't contain a 2 or 8. So this is exactly 2 and 8. And we're going to have a split here of 2, 8, we're going to have a split here of 2, 8, and somewhere across these cells will be 2, 8. Working through some of what that means, it means we've got some limited digits left for actually what's left in this whole space. Here's another thing we can do. For instance, this 4 coming down isn't in this cell, and there'll be a 4 across this row, so a 4 has to be in one of these 2 cells. This 9 coming down has to be in one of these 2 cells. And I think what I'm seeing is we've got a lot of big digits. But if I come back to this region's missing 6, 7, and 9. And this 7 is now suggested to be up top, and this 9 is now suggested to be up top. That makes me think that the cell is a naked single, and I am seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 not in there, and also 7, 8, 9 not in there. So this has to be a 6. So the next placement we're making in this grid that's key is that. Notice that then these 3 cells will be the same as these cells, so this will also have to be a 6. What does that do? That means over in this region, this is a 6. It means this here is a 6. That's going to force this 5 over. Now we have completed actually that tight fit cell. That cancels this. We know for sure a 5 goes here, but not if it's above or below. 6 is still to track over to this region, which goes in here, and the last 6 in the grid in that spot. So some good progress. We might as well come back to this region again. We said that 7 and 9 were a magic set of cells. And you should also recognize that these 3 cells will be these 3 cells. So this cell and this cell will contain the same number. And right now we know that is a 7 or a 9. So let's look at these 2 cells for a bit. And where 7 is only down here, we know more about the digit 9. And one thing we know about the digit 9 is given this value here, it's eliminating all these spaces. So 9 is in this cell or in this cell. Notice that both of those cells see this position. So if this were a 9, we would have nowhere in this region to put a 9. So this has to be a 7. And in marking that in, we're going to get a few more 7s we can place quickly. So in this region, this is the last spot for a 7 because we've eliminated everything else from around, as well as a 7 coming up and down. In this region, we now need to put a 7 to this cell. That means the last 7 is right here. In this column, we have 3 and 4 to go, and there's a 4 in the cell, so we put a 4 in here, put a 3 in large space. This 4 is now pushed down and has to go here. This whole row is finished if a 9 sits in this cell, which moves a 9 over to this cell. Means that 3 is over 4 right here. That 9 puts a 9 here, which puts a 9 here, and the last 9 is then going to have to sit in this corner cell. So we don't know if it's 2 or 8 up top, but we've got some constraints down the grid. This 4 can have an 8, but it can't have a 2, so this has to be the 8, puts in the 2. We get a big 8 here. Coming down this column, just 2 and 3 remain. Coming across this space, we have 4, 7, 8 to go, and there's already a known 4, so this is 4 over 7 with a big 8. We can eliminate the 4 as an option in this cell, and so this will have to be a 4 here, and that leaves behind a big 3. Finishing out this column will be 3 and 5, so 3 on top, 5 on the bottom, and finishing out this space will be 2 over 6. So we've got our way all the way through the grid with some just really good irregular logic thinking. So these ins and outs, some of these clues pointing down and across, getting a 3, 4 here. Felt the first key break-in was getting a 1 having to be on top of this digit, which then put another 1 in here and limited a lot of these cells. Seeing this corner cell was actually a naked single of a 6 after we got the communication of the 9 down here. Got us going, and then actually looking at these joined cells and seeing that they can't contain the digit 9 because that would eliminate a 9 in this region. So maybe 2 or 3 different ahas to work all the way through to the conclusion, but a really satisfying Friday puzzle. Thanks, Sam, for writing it, and I hope you all enjoyed this video. Thanks, we'll see you again soon.